Thank you so much. All right.
Dana, can I ask you a question?
Yeah, of course.
Would it be okay for you to do roll call until Sonia shows up, or do you want to wait until she comes on?
That's a good question. Dory, since you have more historical knowledge and have been around, have we ever waited for the co-chair to join to do roll call, or has it always just someone else jumps in and does it?
Well, we've always had one before we started, so I don't see a problem with it. Anybody can do it. I would assume if we haven't heard back from Sonia.
Yeah. I'll check real quick again.
Do we have to have a quorum of tribes to meet?
Not
For
necessarily
voting.
not necessarily to meet, but to make decisions. So that was the only reason why I
Yeah.
was asking.
Alyssa, do you know if Sonia's planning on joining?
I do not. Let me ask her.
Okay. I assumed she was, because we met earlier today and she didn't say anything about not coming. But I can go ahead and get the list pulled up and
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Does someone have the sheet?
yeah, I pulled it up.
Okay.
So Sonia's first on the list, so I'll just skip. Julie Seastrom.
Here.
Okay, Jemiah Walsman. Alyssa Lane Keene.
Here.
Valerie Switzler. No Valerie. Diane Tiemann, but in her place, I know, is Malia Skunkcap.
Yes, here.
Thank you. Michael Cherry. Angela Fasana.
Yes, I'm here.
Glad you're here. Jennifer Jackson. Well, I know you're here. I didn't hear you say anything, but
Here.
thanks. Melissa Montero. Becky Cantrell.
I'm here, and Marcia won't be joining today.
Okay, thank you. All right. Jory Spencer. Jamie Crane. Jesse Jackson.
Present.
Thank you. And Jennifer Reed.
Present.
Okay, awesome. So it looks like then we do have a quorum, which is great. And hopefully others can join as we get started. So we had to move a couple things around on the agenda just because of some last minute scheduling and updates. So first on the agenda is going to be Northwest Native Chamber. So I'll pass it over to Amber and Michael.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Dana. One second here as I pull up the presentation. Okay, can we see my screen okay? Getting thumbs up. Okay, perfect. All right. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Michael Johnson. I am an enrolled member of the Nez Perce tribe, but I also have Yakima and Umatilla descendancy. I work at the Northwest Native Chamber as the Oregon Resource Navigator, and we're super excited to hold space with you all today. I would like to thank everyone for gathering and for that beautiful, beautiful prayer to set us off in a good way. So today we're going to talk a little bit about our tribal needs assessment as well as particularly the Child Care Infrastructure Fund. And before I hand it off to our programs director, or excuse me, our Chief, Chief of Programs, Amber Feist, I would want to talk a little bit about CCIF round updates as provided from Business Oregon. So CCIF Round 2 awardees should be notified by June 13th of award. So folks who have applied, tribes, businesses, entities that have applied for this should be notified by June 13th, this Friday. Scores will be published in the following weeks on the Business Oregon website, and those will be posted similarly with the Excel spreadsheet of scores. If you need any help interpreting said score, please reach out to us as a technical assistance provider. And finally, for round 3, it is expected to open late summer or early fall. So again, if you have any questions in regards to timelines or technical assistance, we are here as a resource. And I'm gonna go ahead and pass it off to Amber Feist.
Apologies, I was muted. Good afternoon, everyone. We're gonna keep this presentation pretty short, just kind of an acknowledgement of all of the longer conversations that we'll be having today. But we did want to give an update to you all as the TAC, just on kind of where we're at within this process in partnership with DELC related to our tribal needs assessment. It's really grounded in tribal experiences with kind of CCIF as the case study for us to explore the broader landscape of not only childcare access, infrastructure, and affordability, but also really just thinking about kind of those shared goals and visions that we've been hearing from our tribal site visits that we've been doing. So a lot of the data and information within the needs assessment is, it's coming from not only our site visits, but also our TA that we've been providing in access to CCIF, as well as the applications themselves. I do want to note there are 2 tribal communities that we have yet to visit, Burns Paiute and the Siletz tribe. And so we are, sending out communications and trying to work on really, meeting those communities and getting to come out and learn more about their visions and goals. So this current assessment, it's also drawing on some survey responses and direct feedback. And I think where we're at in the process right now is that we created profiles of tribal communities based on kind of all of these data analysis, and they are in process of approval from each tribe individually. In addition, we also have a survey that's open to kind of supplement some of the data. If you want to move on to the next slide. So, I think a lot of this initial assessment is really focused on not only the shared goals and visions, but also, just kind of identifying how tribes view childcare in a very different manner than I think some other ways that childcare has been presented. And also just really highlighting some of those markers of success. And so, how tribes are viewing not only the programs that they're operating, but what it means to be successful in operating those programs and what resources are needed in order to continue operating or to grow kind of with the changing climate in childcare. So this is just, I think an update of the process. So we've submitted those profiles to our contacts with tribal staff. If you're curious about the tribal profile or you want to check in with your staff, we're more than happy to get connected and make sure that you have access to that profile as well. We'll be kind of working on those approvals for not only storytelling, but data sharing with DELC. And just making sure that anything that's in this public-facing document is approved by the tribal communities based on what they've shared. And then our final report is going to be submitted to DELC on June 30th. And right now it's a very narrative-driven document, but by the time we'll be submitting it, it will be more of an interactive document that has video content and, visual aids and really telling the story of kind of what's needed. I think the one thing that I will kind of just highlight and something that we're hoping to continue working on is just within this report, things that we identified as missing. The data access for tribes, tribal communities, and specifically the quantitative data is something that I think is really important as our programs continue to grow and evolve, and for advocacy efforts, as well as just the state's understanding of how tribes are operating within their communities at large. We also really, I think, want to do more work in fiscal modeling and really identifying good case studies of how people are bringing different funding sources together to either grow or start early childhood centers. We've been getting a lot of really incredible, not only stories from just meeting with people, but also we're in the process of developing a curriculum that would be not only for whether it be employees of tribes or tribal leaders themselves, but also other businesses and Native-owned businesses to have a culturally specific resource to be able to lean on. I think that takes us to the end. So we are still, I think this Friday is the deadline for tribal profile approval. And once we have a final draft to share, we're really excited to bring it to this group, and also hope that it informs a lot of the other efforts and work that are going to be, of discussion, I'm sure, moving forward. So that's, I don't know if there is specific questions, I'm happy to take them, but I also just want to say that you're welcome to call me or email us, and we'd love to follow up.
Dana, it's okay to ask a question?
Yeah, go ahead, Julie.
I just want to check. I saw that I'm Julie Seastrom. I'm Hanas and I'm tribal council for the Confederated Tribes of the Coos, Lower Umpqua, and Siuslaw. And I also serve on this committee. And I just want to check. I saw that we were listed on your list as having visited us, and I just wanted to check to see if the visit that you had with Jemiah, how everything was going with that, and if you had anything to say about the visit you had with us. Jemiah Wassman.
Yeah, absolutely. I think CT Clusie in particular, because there wasn't an early childhood center, was a really interesting visit, Julie, because I think there is a very clear plan and process that has been identified for an actual building. You all were very far in that process in terms of not only the engineering, but the construction and the bidding. I think there was a decision to not move forward in round 2, just with timelines and I think business case for the tribal council. But we are still working with Jemiah and also with your CFO for an application during round 3.
Good to hear. Thank you so much.
Yeah, and I just want to add and acknowledge that Amber and Michael and the rest of their team have been amazing to work with. I've been lucky enough to get to go on most of the site visits with them, and so getting to see the way that they do their work and the deep understanding that they have of working with tribes, and then building the childcare infrastructure knowledge into it has been awesome. And I look forward to seeing the final report, and I also look forward to seeing how many tribes are awarded, knock on wood, in this when this round the award list is published.
Excellent. Well, again, if anybody wants to follow up, I will put my phone number and my email address in the chat, and then we'll be in contact soon.
Thank you. Well, I really appreciate you coming and presenting. We'll keep updates flowing. This is the last TAC meeting, but we'll still share updates with the group. So if you have updates later, Amber will make sure to coordinate those to go out to the group or in one of our Tribal Affairs newsletters. But I can go ahead and share my screen now. And I'm going to pass it over to Kathy and Alyssa to share some legislative updates now.
Thanks, Dana. And I see that Alyssa's joined as well. So I think we're going to go ahead and just tag team on a pretty robust update. So there's a lot of things that happened in the session when it comes to the Tribal Early Learning Plan and Fund Bill, and also to DELC's budget. So I'll go ahead and kick us off first to talk about DELC's budget bill, and then Director Chatterjee can also fill in and be on deck to help answer any questions that folks may have. So the big and the good news is that Senate Bill 5514, DELC's budget bill, passed out of the full Joint Ways and Means Committee on Friday, June 6th. And there were, the great news is that there were several positions. So these are new positions that would be added to DELC that were funded. So not going to read through all of it, but a lot of these positions really help support our operations work. So, you know, as an agency that is still relatively new, that's really trying to stand up lots of different things. These are some of the requests that we received for accounting, some project management, and some IT related positions. So you can see the list here. In addition to POP 101, we also received funding for, I think we also received funding for $3.1 million for our childcare licensing division. So just want to note that this is all federal funding. It's not state funding. And so again, if the dollars go through on the federal side, this is money that will go towards our childcare licensing division to really help address caseload numbers, as well as to do additional investigations and really meet the needs of our customer service. Next slide, please. So, you know, the budget, while we were grateful to have additional positions, also came with some recommendations from the legislature in terms of reductions. And so this is something that I know that our budget team is still doing some additional analysis on. But some of the areas that the Legislative Fiscal Office recommended reductions on included taking off an additional inflationary adjustment. So this additional inflation was removed, but the standard inflation remains intact. And the additional inflationary adjustment was something that I believe back in the fall, it was something that, you know, we were thinking we might get this additional inflationary adjustment. It wasn't certain, and it was something that we never had before. And so it was, you know, so this is still keeping our standard inflation, but just removing this additional inflationary percentage. And then we also know that based off of the LFO's recommendation, that because revenues are down, so, you know, back in May, we have the May revenue projection where there is, you know, there's a decrease right now in state revenue when it comes to our general fund and CAT, which is the corporate activities tax. So unfortunately, all those revenues are down. And so that impact is about 35 million in reductions. So this is a slight decrease from the biennium that the legislature approved for DELC in 2023 and 2025. So you'll kind of see here that as a result of the $35 million reduction, these are some of the programs that are going to be impacted because, as I mentioned before, the revenue statewide has been down. So we also know that, you know, that Oregon Department of Education, right, Higher Education Coordination Commission, many other state agencies are unfortunately are also taking hits when it comes to reductions as a result of the May revenue forecast. So just wanted to name these programs. Again, our team is still doing some additional analysis on, right? So then what does this mean for programs and services? And I know that we are trying to minimize the impact of the work that we're doing to make sure families and children get the support that they need. And then next
Sorry,
slide.
Kathy, I had
Yes.
a question on that. So, when you say impacted, what what does that mean? You mean these are going away? You mean they're going to be reduced? When will we know what quote unquote impacted means?
Yeah, great question. I don't know if Director Chatterjee wants to take this.
Happy to.
Yeah.
Yes, so it means that the legislature has outlined reductions to these programs. They're not eliminating any of them. They've just named budget cuts to those programs specifically. We're looking at the ways that we can sort of absorb those reductions and mitigate any impact on direct services to families. We, just like all agencies, we're all in this tricky limbo of the biennium starts July 1st, but legislative session ends June 20th. So there's not much time to actually make sure our grant agreements have the latest information. So likely you'll receive grant agreements with the latest information because we won't even go through reconciliation. So the kind of process is once our budget is signed, we will then work with the Department of Administrative Services. They have a whole accounting function, and they basically validate and kind of match up the budget to make sure we have an accurate understanding of how much money we're going to get. And that won't be concluded until mid-late July. And so we are still working to put our grant agreements out the door on time. And then you're likely going, or you may see an amendment from us with some updated figures once that reconciliation occurs. This also means that if there are some adjustments in the end of session bill that aren't reflected in our budget, that all gets accounted for. So the legislature did name the reductions they want to take to each of these programs. For Equity Fund, HFO, actually Parenting Ed and Preschool Promise, it's about 10% of the early learning account budget, not the total program budget necessarily, since some of these are funded by the early learning account and general fund. But we're working on how we kind of spread that out so that, again, we're minimizing impact. So we'll have better figures in the coming weeks.
Great, thank you so much. That helps a lot.
Good, good. Yeah, no problem.
Thank you. And if we can move to the next slide, Dana. Thank you. So again, as a result of the decrease in revenue, we also know that there isn't any additional investments that are coming from the legislature. So these include the things that were originally included in the governor's recommended budget. So again, this would be birth through 5 literacy, the Dolly Parton Imagination Library, infant early childhood mental health consultation, and the Tribal Early Learning Fund. So we did want to note, however, that the bill, House Bill 2815, that establishes the Tribal Early Learning Plan and Fund, it did pass. So it did pass through the Education Subcommittee last week, as well as the full Joint Ways and Means Committee on Friday. But we just want to say that it didn't pass with this additional funding from the governor's recommended budget. I know that there's going to be some conversations that I believe Director Chatterjee and Paulina and others are having around is there an opportunity? Are there ways to get this additional funding through an end of session bill? So we can provide more information there. But the good news is that the legislation that you all worked on so hard did pass. So that is something to note and to celebrate. And at this point, given all of these figures that you see here, there is a chance for some of these other additional items to be included. So we're in active conversations right now. And then just as a side note, House Bill 2811, that's the Dolly Parton Imagination Library bill. So that legislation is still in the Education Subcommittee on Ways and Means. And that is still, a bill that Delk has worked with the foundation on to make sure that children in our state can get access to free books every month. And so, but again, with the really, difficult funding landscape that we're in, particularly for next biennium, we're trying to see if there's an opportunity there to leverage more philanthropy, foundations, et cetera, to get what we need to continue providing this to children. So all that to say, still about 2.5 weeks left of session. A lot of budget bills are getting voted out, including our budget bill. So the budget bill will be voted on the House floor, scheduled next Monday. And we will see what happens in the next 2.5 weeks with additional funding.
This is Angie, and I just had another question. So, first on the birth through 5 literacy, so does that mean we won't have those grants that we had for birth through 5 this last biennium?
Great question, Angie. So we are still going to have a tribal set aside of the birth through 5 literacy program. So what this was doing is when House Bill 3198 passed in 23, it had 9.4 million for Delk, but they held the funds back until the 24 session. And so we effectively had, a little 9.5 million to spend in 1 year. This birth through 5 literacy request was trying to say, basically, so you need to double the investment because now we're going to have to spread that same amount of money over 2 years. And the legislature did not fund that. So we are still going to have a tribal set aside. We're working right now on what the new kind of distribution would be, since there aren't additional dollars. And so we will have updated figures for what that set aside amount will be. And it'll be for 2 years instead of just the 1 year.
I gotcha. And then in terms of the Tribal Early Learning Fund, if I understand correctly, the new funds weren't added, but our current funds of 69 plus an inflation rate are part of your base budget now. And so those are still intact.
Correct. And they've moved them into this new fund. So they are no longer called Tribal Hub dollars. They will be called Tribal Early Learning Fund dollars.
Okay, that's what I understood from my conversations with Dana too. So I just wanted to clarify that. So we're all on the same page. Thank you.
Yes. Thanks, Angie.
Oh, sorry. I have one more question. Are these like the Tribal Early Learning Fund? What do you think there's any potential to address that again in a short session when new revenue forecasts come out?
We actually wanted to talk through some alternatives for consideration. I don't think a short session path is likely. Typically short sessions, because agencies have so few ways of making requests, they tend to be reserved for urgent needs. So, we have a budgetary shortfall we need to fill. It's wildfire season. The wildfire budget has grown. And so it's unlikely we'd be able to ask for that in short session. We did want to talk with you about, potential paths for this session, knowing that the end of session bill is still being developed, and where you all may want to carry a revised request forward.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, and that's a really good segue. So, Dana, if you can advance the slide on House Bill 2815, thank you. So this is the last slide that we can spend a little bit more time, as Alyssa said, that there could be a different pathway should you all choose to take, which would be restoring some additional funds from a previous biennium. But I just wanted to say before we get into that, that the full vote on this bill is likely going to be tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. on the House floor. So really really exciting. I know that I'll be tuning in to watch on OLIS, and I'm sure we'll be sending out the link to watch as well. Representative Zach Hudson has been assigned to carry the bill. So what that means is that he'll just be making sort of a, no more than 5-minute speech about the bill to the House members, why it's important that it was developed, in collaboration with TAC and DELC. And so he'll sort of say, what the bill does. And then we also reached out to him today to offer additional messaging and talking points. And so sometimes legislators are fine like writing their own floor speech. Other times they ask for help for anything that they want some clarity on. So we did offer that, and we're just waiting to hear back if he needs any talking points or messaging for his speech. And then, as I mentioned, DELC's budget bill 5514 is planned to be voted on Monday. So, and then also want to appreciate some of the folks here who really helped craft together a press release with Dana and with Paulina. We know that we're going to include some of your quotes in that press release as soon as the bill gets voted out of the floor. So yeah, so it'll be exciting to just celebrate this milestone of this legislation passing. So with that said, yeah, I wanted to see if there was anything else on here that folks had questions on.
Dana, is it okay to ask a question?
Yeah, you can absolutely ask a question. I also real quick wanted to mention that I see Jemiah and Sonia have both joined.
Oh, wonderful.
Not at quorum, but now
Mm.
more.
Hi, Jemiah. Hi, Sonia.
Good afternoon.
It's good to hear your voice.
Good afternoon.
Good to hear your voice. I just wanted to check with you, Kathy, and make sure that I got it right. I think I understood your conversation back and forth with Angela, but I just want to get it clear for myself as well that 2815 passed, but passed without money.
Yes, that's right, Julie. So the legislation that that is included in the bill, it will put a lot of things in statute, right? So initially we didn't know why the bill went to Ways and Means, because it didn't take any money to actually implement 2815. So that's what we asked leadership to do, was just to get voted, out of committee. Because it doesn't cost DELC anything, right, to implement 2815. And we just noted that there is additional funding that was recommended in the GRB if that additional funding were to go through. So just wanted to clarify that there was no fiscal on the bill. And then in addition to that, there wasn't additional funding that was discussed in committee. So, but again, if there are different conversations that are happening of the possibility of having additional funding, then that is those are conversations that are happening. But I'm not a part of those, so I don't know if Director Chatterjee wants to jump in, but the base bill itself passed, and it did not pass with the additional funding.
I had two more questions. The second one is, if I understood the conversation again that you were having back and forth with Angela, whatever monies were allocated to tribes previously for the program still exist. It's just the additional monies that are not going to be coming across.
That's correct, Julie. Yep, you get that money just moved to the tribal fund. So we still have what we had.
Yes.
It's just that we're not growing.
Exactly.
More on that. Okay. And the last one was there was a slide, I don't know what it was numbered, but there was a slide that shows SB 5514, and when that passed, there was a certain number of people that get to be added positions. How many total does that cover? I tried to read it, but you ran through it pretty quick.
Yeah, I think it's 7. I don't know, Dana, if you can go back a couple slides. I think it's 7 positions that we received for the agency.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thanks, Julie.
Yes, it is 7.
Well, I think that was the piece that I had covered, and I don't know if there are the rest of the slides are.
Dana, do you want me to frame up the proposal before we get into the funding distribution conversation?
Yeah, sure. I can. Do you want this for the costs to show
Sure.
what they tried, or
Yeah,
just
yeah. So one thing I know, so we raised this at the government to government education cluster yesterday. I know we flagged it just for you all in an email. So as a reminder, the governor's recommended budget had 4.75 million recommended for the tribal early learning fund. And the intention was that would allow each tribe to receive an additional 500,000. And then you all wanted there to be a 5% set aside for DELC, which was about 250K, so that we could provide contracted services and supports as requested by Otella. So that did not get approved when House Bill 2815 moved forward. They just moved your existing funds as part of our base budget into this new tribal early learning fund. Something you all can consider is making a smaller request than what's in the governor's recommended budget. And a place you all could think of starting is to basically ask to restore the federal preschool development grant dollars you received in 21-23 with some inflationary adjustments applied. And so that is not a lot. It is nowhere near an additional 500,000 per tribe. But it is a small figure that maybe could be entertained by the legislature. It's also a figure that's rooted in work you all have done. And so it's easy to demonstrate that you all could spend those dollars. You've shared with us, and we could share back with you how you spent those funds. And so you'd kind of be equipped to tell a really compelling story, because it wouldn't be possibilities. You actually could say, we would be able to resurrect or continue these things that you had to stop in 21-23. DELC isn't able to advocate for that investment, but we're able to provide any information to you all if it's something you'd like to work on with your lobbyists. We have been keeping your lobbyists apprised just of the progress of this legislation and let them know that we would be bringing a proposal forward. And so we're happy to bring that information back to them, but also wanted to give you all space to ask questions, weigh in on if this is of interest, and how we as DELC can support you if it's something you want to pursue.
No, Valerie's here too. Wonderful.
Hi, Alyssa, this is Angie again. Yeah, I missed yesterday's presentation because I was actually at the Capitol. Another hearing, not another bill. But I mean, I think we would support that for sure. So if I don't know how closely you work with Justin Martin and his team.
Yep.
But you could let him know that I would be in support of that, and he can reach out to me if there's ways he thinks or things he thinks I need to do to help support that. Or move that. So yes, I think that would be a good place to try to get a little bit more.
Yep.
Significantly less, but still more in the grand scheme of things.
Thanks, Angie. We can definitely do that.
Is it okay to say something?
Please.
Jemima, I just want to check with you. I think what Angela said, I would agree with her. But I'd like to double check with you to see what you think. If you're still there.
Thanks, Julie. Yeah, I do agree with what Angela's saying. Yep.
Thank you so much.
Yep.
Thank you. We can pass, and we'll make sure you all are looped in on these requests, but we're absolutely happy to take that forward.
I can also
Um,
work. Oh, go ahead.
Well, this is Sonia. Alyssa, could you also, or Dana or Paulina, send us either this slide or something in writing so that we can review it, or anything that you have on the PG funding, just to refresh our memory of, because that was federal funding, not
Yes.
state, correct?
Yep,
Okay.
yep,
So
absolutely.
just what that was so that we have the information.
Yep. And I actually went digging around, Sonia, our old files from 21, 23, so we can, and Dana, I can make sure you got them, pull out some of those old slides that kind of recap those funds and what was used then, so we can pull that together for you all.
So if the budget is potentially going up for a vote tomorrow, what does the timeline then for this request look like?
Great question. So tomorrow's vote is just going to be on House Bill 2815. So it can keep moving across the floors as is. So what this would be is a request to try to get funding in the end of session bill. There isn't an exact date. We know that the legislature has set a goal of wrapping things up by the 18th or 19th. Constitutionally, they have to be wrapped up by the 29th. But the fact that we're seeing some of the big budgets like ODE's budget come through means that they are pretty close. They usually save those big budgets kind of for towards the end. And so my guess is that they'll start buttoning up the end of session bill within the next week and a half. Kathy, does that sound right to you?
Yeah, that sounds right.
So it is a pretty quick turnaround, and we know a lot of folks are going to be fighting for a lot of things in that end of session bill, given reductions that we're seeing in budgets and things like that. So definitely no guarantees, but I'd say over the next week and a half or so, we'll likely start to see things wind down and final decisions getting made on those items.
Yeah, and Sonia, what you asked was what I was gonna say is that I was gonna work on. So you hit the nail on the head, and that will be what we can do. And then if there's anything else that would be helpful, where we could support, like going back and looking at where PDG funds were spent, and pulling those reports, we can definitely do that too.
That's helpful because all of these grants at some point start running together.
Yeah, definitely. Well, any last questions about the funding proposal for Alyssa?
I just want to say thank you to all of you guys that have been working on this so diligently and back and forth with us and keeping us informed as each day has been going. I've been so thankful that you keep us in the loop and update us throughout the changes. Humbly, thank you.
Thanks, Julie. It's been our pleasure. And we're really excited that the bill is at least moving, because I think that's so critical for us being able to support you all in doing the work you want. And then we'll be in a place where we can say, here's a comprehensive plan that you all have created. And if you give us whatever bucket of money we come up with together for next biennium, this is what you'll purchase, and here's how Delca's prepared to, we'll be in a place where we really can tell the story and hopefully put us in an even better position, recognizing we don't know what revenue forecasts will look like by then. But I think even if we don't see an increase in investment, this is still a really important milestone and change in being able to get rid of the tribal hub and create Otella, create the tribal early learning plan and fund. So just thank you for all of your work to help us get on the right track. And it's been an honor to work with you all on this.
I want to second Julie's grateful and gratitude. This has been a long process, and you've stuck with us through some pretty big mountains and some pretty big bumps and some setbacks and some total shifting gears. So so much gratitude goes out to you and your team for doing all this work and really just keeping us informed and saying what you needed and when you need it from us. And I think this is a huge step forward, funding or no funding, anytime we get to exercise our sovereignty and leverage it in this way and now have this government to government relationship. It's a huge step forward for all of us and for Delk. So thank you so much.
Thanks, Angie.
Yeah, I'd like to just echo what Julie and Angela are saying. I appreciate all the hard work from all the Delk staff. It really means a lot. And it's a huge lift. I did want to ask real quick, Alyssa, can you clarify the timeline for when tribes would need to submit a revised funding request if there's going to be a pursuit of some of the restoration of the funding through the end of session bill?
Yeah, I would say, ideally lobbyists are bringing this to the table in the next week, just because we want to make sure it gets into the mix, as the co-chairs entertain a number of ideas. And so likely what it looks like is, working with your lobbyist on talking points, which again, like if there's anything we can do to support, and they would approach legislative leadership, Speaker of the House, Senate President, speaking with the co-chairs of the Full Ways and Means Committee, the Education Subcommittee. So kind of doing some targeted outreach to key legislative leaders to try to get this on one of their priority lists so that it makes it into the end of session bill.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
Well, thank you all. We do have some time a little later in the agenda to talk about reflections of time spent on TAC working on this. So I feel like we did a little bit of that just now, but we have some more time for it. I wanted to touch on the funding piece because like we've been discussing the funding that was allocated. There was no new funding. It was just the 0.7 million. So it's like 665,000, which is roughly 73,000 per tribe. And so TAC has spent a long time looking at the different kinds of funding distribution methods and how we should do that. And we've stayed positive and didn't consider if it's only the continuing amount that was already in the tribal hub funding. And so with the dollar amount being only 0.7 million, the needs-based method that TAC had proposed when we were talking about a full 5.1 million doesn't really make sense. And so I just want to test the waters, and you can come off mute, or you can do a thumbs up. But does everyone feel that moving back to equal distribution with only the 0.7 million split amongst all 9 tribes makes the most sense? Thumbs up from Val, Julie, Melissa Linkeen, Angela Fasana, from Cow Creek, and Jemiah, and from Sonia. Thank you, Jennifer. I was going to say there's the bar on the top of Zoom is like right above your head. So I couldn't tell if you had the thumbs up emoji. So I'm glad you used the chat. And Becky, I know you're driving. So I don't know if you still can hear us. Okay. See a thumbs up. So just making sure. So I think that gives us a majority. Malia, would that be a question for Diane, or do you think that?
Yeah, that'd be more of a question for Diane. And also now that we are getting a new education manager, kind of got to come together. So
We can confirm, make sure that that's good with Burns Paiute tribe, and then also I think Umatilla is the only other tribe that's not here today, so I'll touch base with Jory and Jamie too. But I also want to, just because there is the possibility that more funding could be allocated in the end of session bill, whether it's the additional 700,000 or other surprise money, fingers crossed. But if it were the 700,000 to replace to restore the preschool development grant funding from 21-23, that would come out to about an additional 77,000 per tribe. And so each, instead of 0.7 million for the tribal early learning fund, it would be about 1.4 million. And so each tribe, if we distributed it equally in that case, it would be 151,000 per tribe. And so one thing that I wanted to point out, when we did the exercise of looking at what the needs were for each tribe, when we did have the needs-based funding proposal on the table, the lowest amount that was requested in there, if that was the equal distribution amount, and it was across all of the tribes, that would have been 2.6 million. So it kind of seems like if the amount received by the end of session, as long as it's under 2.6 million, which it seems very highly likely that it will be, that the equal distribution, dividing it equally amongst all 9 tribes, will still make the most sense. Therefore, the additional 700,000, if that is received, just dividing it equally is still the preferred method, rather than doing a needs-based proposal like we had looked at before, just because of the amount being much lower than what we planned for. Does that sound correct to everyone? Or are there thoughts, questions, concerns? Okay, I see a thumbs up from Angela Fasana. Thank you. Thumbs up from Jemiah. And Alyssa Lane, and Malia, and Jennifer Jackson.
I think Val, thumbs
And
up.
Val,
for voting.
thank you. And Cow Creek, and Becky. Okay. Great. Well, although I'd rather that we had more money, at least we can solve this problem for the time being. And the one positive, at least, is that in getting the grant agreements ready for the new biennium, once we know the dollar amount, it will be much easier to just put those amounts into the grant agreements. So moving on to one other thing that I did want to touch on. We talked about the early literacy funding a little bit. So birth through 5 is still going to be coming through. And even though it's not additional funds, it should still be around the 200,000 per tribe. There's obviously different allowable uses between the Tribal Early Learning Fund and early literacy. But even though it's not like early literacy replaces the Tribal Early Learning Fund, it still has complementary uses. It supports language revitalization and preservation, as well as early literacy, including things like parenting education and parent-child interaction. Thanks for coming, Jemiah. But they provide some stability coming into the next biennium. So just wanted to check if there's any questions about this, anything on this slide before we move forward. So I just wanted to give an update then of what we're expecting and what the process is for appointments and the timelines over the next few months. So as soon as the bill passes, we'll send out the requests for tribes to appoint members to Atella. That will be possibly in June, but by the time it's actually sent, it could be July. We have gotten some feedback that we should be very specific in that letter as far as what we are asking for of tribes, like what we're looking for in the appointments to Atella, and that we should give options as to what level of authority the appointee can have, like whether or not they should be just a representative to serve on Otella, or if the representative to serve on Otella can also perform formal tribal consultation, so that it doesn't end up being duplicative like it sometimes has been for the Tribal Advisory Committee, where you might be serving in both capacities, but there's not really been anything that separates who does what on TAC from tribal consultation. So because we know that not all tribes are going to grant the same level of authority. And so I'd be curious if you have any other feedback on that. Then we'll also know the final funding amounts by the end of June, so we can finalize the dollar amounts for the agreements and get those sent out in July. And then tentatively throughout July and August, we'd be hoping to receive back the Otella appointments from tribes. And then when those are received, we'll work on finding a scheduling time for the first Otella meeting, which hopefully September, and just virtual would be easiest. And they're going to be bi-monthly. And given that we'd be sending out the letter requesting for appointments to Atella in maybe late June, early July, hoping to have our first meeting in September, are there any concerns about that timeline? Does it seem realistic? Or any other considerations?
Dana, is it okay to say something?
Yeah, go ahead.
This sounds fine with me, and I have to double check with Jemiah, but he and I had been given approval to speak on our behalf. So I'm guessing that we will re-up for the next session. So I don't know, if that's acceptable or not, but my guess is that that's how it's going to go for our tribe.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to have both you and Jemiah be reappointed.
So I just wanted to be sure that letters will be going out in June. And who are you? Because I know some things have changed. Who are you guys sending the letters to?
That's a great question. Paulina, I would, since this is falls under tribal consultation, were you planning on sending them to our current contacts, or did you have something else in mind?
We would, for the most part, send them to the tribal education managers, and per the tribe's recommendation, send it to the people that they've appointed for consultation currently. So for the most part, that looks a little bit different, but I would say for the majority of the tribes, it would be to their tribal education manager, and then that person usually elevates it according to their procedures.
Absolutely. Thank you. I just wanted to make sure that I wasn't, I didn't need to kind of look for it, because sometimes if it goes to the tribal chairman, then it gets kicked to our CEO and then it funnels down to me. So I just wanted to make sure that I should be looking for it. And as long as it goes that route, then this timeline should be tight but doable. So
Okay. That's helpful. Yeah, I've already got the letter drafted. Obviously, there's going to be final touches and last reviews from Paulina and Alyssa before we send it out. But the groundwork has already been laid. It's really just waiting on the bill to pass. So I also see some positive things in the chat that the timeline should be good. Yeah, and the timeline would be the beginning of July or end of June potentially. So we shouldn't even have to worry about August, Jennifer.
I just had a quick comment. I don't know, our tribe just had a new election and they were seated in May. And at one of their recent tribal council meeting, they were going to be discussing consultation. I don't know where they're at in that. But our last directors meeting with the interim general manager, because our general manager is no longer there, the way that it's getting sent to our tribe right now is currently okay. Even if it gets sent directly to the tribal council, they kick it back to me. I don't know how we're going to be operating as a government, I guess I could say, right now, if they're going to kick everything back to the directors, or how they're going to do their consultation. So that's just a side note.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, if the process does end up changing for Klamath, just let us know between now and, well, actually let us know anyway. If it's after we send out this request for Otella appointments, there's always going to be other consultations. So keep us posted on that. Right. So I promised that we had some time to reflect back on TAC. And yes, Malia, we can definitely include their the BPT Ed email. No problem. So the purpose of this time is just to look back on the last 4 years of the Tribal Advisory Committee and the work that we've done, the key takeaways of the work and lessons learned, and then hopes for the future, since we'll be sunsetting and then re-emerging as the Oregon Tribal Early Learning Alliance. So I shared some prompts in advance. Obviously, we don't have time to go through everything, but I will go ahead and put in the chat the main purpose of this discussion time. So, and then just a couple primary questions to focus on that seem the most relevant. Bear with me while my computer catches up. It's been really slow. I probably should have restarted, but I didn't, because then that means I have to reopen everything.
Dana, okay to say something?
Yeah, go ahead.
I just want to again send up respect and appreciation for all the people who came before us to lay the foundation for us to do the work that we're doing today. And I want to say thank you again to all the people who are here now, working on it right now, in hopes for our children to have the best future they can.
you, Julie. Yeah, that's really important. That wasn't just us. I mean, we're the ones here now, but a lot of the groundwork has been being laid for years, for decades, for a long time. So I just dropped into the chat some primary questions. Looking back, reflecting on your time served on the Tribal Advisory Committee, what are insights that you can share? Then inward looking, what are some takeaways from the Tribal Advisory Committee? What accomplishments are you most proud of? And what were the greatest barriers and challenges faced? And then looking outward and forward, what are your hopes for the future Tribal Early Learning Plan and Fund and OTELA Advisory Committee? What do we hope stays the same as TAC, and what do we hope is different? So I'll just
This
go
is, yeah, I don't know if I'll touch on all of those, but I just want to give appreciation for this process. It started out very rocky. You know, there was it took some work to get to co-collaboration. It was once, you know, there was good intentions, but the hopes and the dreams of this was born out of the education committee and raised by Umatilla and Warm Springs. And so the vision of having this work, it took a while to get forward momentum. You know, we would take steps forward and take steps back. But when we really got to the point of co-collaborating and really understanding why the wants and the needs of this work were so important for tribes and the tribal set aside and the dollars, we were really able to get to the work and develop it together. And I'm very proud of that. You know, we were a hub because we were told we had to be a hub. And then once that we found out we didn't have to be a hub, it didn't make the most sense when the dollars could be directly to us. We wouldn't have to develop something else. The dollars could come to us and we could exercise our sovereignty and use them to benefit and still retain funds for professional development, which all of our tribes, our early education staff can utilize. So I'm really proud of the co-collaboration that happened and the work that we did together, and acknowledge that it wasn't easy. There were times that were frustration on everyone's part because we were trying to support the work and the dreams of those tribes that wanted somewhere that really looked at their language and their teachers and culture in the classrooms and why that was needed and what made that separate, and where we didn't have to constantly explain to people the importance of those things, and we could use those dollars to directly affect our tribal members. And once that we get this where it's even more streamlined, where things are base funded, I think they'll be even more impactful. Right now, we're still at the process where even with this PNG dollars, if we get them, those may not be ongoing after that. So it's hard to be really impactful. The money's been beneficial no matter what, but when we can make change to wage and to different things, that can be even more impactful. So I just appreciate all of the work. And again, I've been doing education for over 30 years, and Val and I talk a lot, and Julie just mentioned it. When we sat in those rooms, and these were just hopes and dreams and passion for people that put life work into having direct tribal set aside, those were dreams. Being respected in the room, those were hopes and dreams. And so I'm just appreciative that we all got to this place together.
Sonia, that was beautiful.
This is Angie again, and I did already express a lot of gratitude, but I think that yesterday, some of it even hit hard at home to walk into the Capitol, and I left and kind of reflected a little bit. It was a great hearing, and but when you're in that building, you really feel the weight of your people, of your government, of your kids, all looking to you to like make differences and to make changes for them. And I thought to myself how it must feel for you all at Delt to carry the weight of all children in Oregon. So it's a lot to carry, and you guys are over there and you're doing that work so much more frequently. And so again, just so much gratitude for that. I've really, really appreciated my time on this committee. Getting to know all of you at DELC and really getting to know all my tribal partners. Val's spirit, commitment, dedication to this at times just really carried me through, and I felt like it was going nowhere, to be honest. And then it just is a testament to how us as tribes in this state can really work together when we have a common goal, and we all agree on how important our children are. And so our values are reflected in that work, and our cultural heritage and ancestors really pushing us all in the direction to do what's best for our kiddos at the same time, regardless of where we're at in the state and regardless of other conflicts that, you know, might arise between us as different tribes. But in looking forward, I just am really excited about the plan and how it's going to be able to direct the work. And then we're going to be able to leverage that hopefully for future funding options, whether they're foundation dollars or state dollars or federal dollars. But we now have a plan, you know, we will have a plan that we all agree on to move forward. And I think that's a good leverage document and device, if you will, to leverage for this work that we all are so passionate about doing, and these little kids that we care so much about. So I think those are some of my big takeaways, is that we can really do big things when we really work together. And I'm just so grateful to all my tribal partners as well for all the knowledge and things they brought to, and their experiences they brought to the table, because I didn't have any when I walked into the room. So I had to rely and trust on a lot of their experiences and them really teaching me, and I appreciate that. So particularly Sonia and Val, I think have been the ones that have taught me the most throughout this process, and just because I've been with them, I think the longest. So I'll give you big hugs when I see you both again. So thank you.
I kind of want to echo Angela's compliments and gratitude, not just to the entire group, but specifically Sonia took the lead for our tribe. So she has been the point person, and this all came about when I became education director for the tribe, and it was very humbling to watch this new group start out and kind of sit back and think about all of the work that was done prior to this to get this group of educators, tribal educators, to this point. And I am just very thankful and very proud of everybody who has made the commitment to work out all the wrinkles of this, because like Sonia said, it did feel kind of clunky in the beginning. And it's really amazing what ended up coming out of this, and the financial support to tribes to be able to decide what is needed for their littlest of learners, and to be able to have that autonomy over what's going to work best for us is just an incredible gift. And I'm really excited for what Otella is going to bring. So I just want to say thank you to everybody who has dedicated their time to, like I said, working out the wrinkles, because it did take a little bit of time for us to get a good clip and to figure out what we were doing and how we were going to do it. And that's all thanks to you all. So I really appreciate every bit of work that everybody has done to get us to where we are today.
This is Valerie. I just wanted to share some thoughts. You know, it was back in Canada, might be about a decade and a half ago. I don't know, maybe it's even more than that. But I know that the state was coming around, and it was those that were watching over early childhood education then, and they said, well, you have a chance to have a hub, and or you have a chance that to join the hub in your local region, I should say. And then it was like, well, why don't we have our own hub? It's like where we were thought of as always second, or we weren't a thought at all sometimes. And it just amazed me that we weren't consulted. And so, I believe too, this might be of the push for consultation in between the tribes and us. And, and one of the comments that was made was, well, how are you going to get 9 tribes to agree to do something together? And, it just amazed me that, well, why couldn't we? Why shouldn't we? We're all, we all put our politics on the back burner, and we always move to do whatever is best for the kids. And that's always been the focus, is our kids, because they're the ones that are going to be our leaders one day. And they, in fact, those that are, when we first started this process, they're graduating with, and some of them have babies now and into the programs. But I went to Head Start conference at one point, and there was, there was an emphasis on language, and they said you could do language, in the Head Start classroom. And I was so excited, and I brought it back. And what the tribe didn't, or the leaders in the early childhood at that time didn't think that language was a primary focus. And so, it's been a long time. It's been a roller coaster ride. We're still riding that roller coaster as far as our own community. But what makes me feel really good is that we can come together as 9 tribes, and we could focus on what's best for the children, what's good for our children, our grandchildren now. And, to help deliver some quality programming for our kids, because they deserve it. And I really believe, and I've always believed, that language, culture, and tradition is that base. And so I'm very glad for the flexibility of being able to provide that kind of programming for our kids now. And so our next goal is to have our own immersion school. So, it's hopes and dreams, and looking forward to the future. Language, culture, and tradition has been the main focus now for from preschool to K8 or K-12. And you know, our kids are more engaged. Our kids are believe in themselves and they have that self-esteem. So I know part of it is some of the other trainings that they take, but I truly believe that the leadership comes from our own elders. And those are the people's words that I'm standing on, is those that came before me and instilled what was good for our children, what was good for our community. And I still fight every day to do that. And so I just want to say thank you, Sonia, for taking over and getting us on a good path. And I recognize that it was a little bit clunky. It was because when I ran it, I'm a little bit clunky. But I just want to say how much I appreciate everybody and everybody coming together for the benefit of our children, and to Delk for watching over all of our children. So anyway, that's all I have to say.
That's all you have to say. You say it like you didn't say anything profound, but it nearly brought me to tears. So thank you for sharing, Val. And that is a great way to wrap up our final TAC meeting. We will reconvene in September as Otella, with whoever is appointed for Otella. So probably many of you will still be on Otella. So I'm glad about that. I have some boring reminders. So following from our reflections, this is not very exciting, but the grant is coming to an end. So the Otella Tribal Hub grants end. June 30th is the final day to spend funds, and then the reports are going to be due. So June 30th is the last day to spend funds, and then the programmatic reports will be due July 31st. And then for fiscal reports, the claims are due August 14th, and then the last expenditure report would be due August 30th. And I'll put all of that in the follow-up email after that I send out, as well as I owe you some follow-up about the funding proposal. And then I'll keep you posted on updates from legislative session, since it looks like the bill should be on the floor tomorrow. But you'll probably hear from me about something unrelated anyway between then and now. So we'll be in touch, and feel free to reach out if you have any questions. Anything to add, Alyssa or Paulina?
Thank you all for letting us be a part of this work with you. We're excited for this next phase.
And we'll miss you, Alyssa, when we come back into session, but look forward to you coming back in, is it January?
Yes, I'll be back in January.
In
I'll be
January.
thinking of you all. Well, I can't promise that.
Congratulations.
Oh, blessings to you and your new baby.
Thank you. Thank you.
I'm so happy for you.
Thanks.
Me too.
Yes, it's been a pleasure to work with you, and just from my time working with you, you have all done an incredible job at Delk, and then also the tribal partners that come to these meetings, and so much has happened, and I'm very proud of the work that you have completed. So very proud.
No, you're not going.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you all.
Thank you all.